And we are live, here to reenact all your favorite moments from Zoom meetings in 2020. Just kidding. We're here to talk about the TV we watched this last sequence of 2 weeks. And you know, I'm pretty pumped about our headliner for tonight. One might say I'm feeling all the things, emotion, rage, ready to fight, ready to celebrate. Happy Miss Scarlet and the Duke Day, and also all the other stuff we watched this week. Kate and Carey, are you also feeling a wild, tumultuous mix of emotions, or are you way more chill than I am about this?
I have never been chill once in my life. What are you asking?
Strangely, I guess I'm always chill, so I'm pretty chill right now as well. Shocker.
I I also have never been chill a day in my life. I'm also particularly excited because I'm not entirely certain what either of your positions are on what we're about to fight about. So it may not even be a fight. And I think that we might have like up to three different opinions here. So pretty stoked about that. But before we get into the Scarlet Duke, latest episode, latest two episodes technically, is there any news to bring other than the fact that I get to be insufferable again annually because Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl? And so is Taylor Swift. So I'm like doubly insufferable, and I'm not sorry. And it's gonna be so great. Win or lose, it's gonna be great. Like, go Chiefs. What about you guys? Any news?
Um, I just bring the fact that there's been a movie announced called Seize Them by Nicola Coughlan and Amy Lou Wood. So Nicola Coughlan is the Penelope from Bridgerton. And it looks like it's a historical comedy, kind of like Monty Python, but that's just based on the trailer, and I have no other information than the trailer, but it looks really fun.
That's exciting. We love that. Harry, what about you? Any news?
The DCU has its Supergirl. Millie Alcock, I think is how it's pronounced. I don't know much about her myself, other than I hear that she was in House of the Dragon and did a pretty good job. I've heard some people say that she was probably the best thing about that show. Um,
Yeah, she was incredible in the show. She had a very tough role to fill because she was playing a young but also very complicated character in a really difficult position, and she just had like really good edge. And at the point where they transitioned to like the main, older actress to play her, people loved her, even like the young version so much they were like, "Oh, couldn't she play older too?" So she was well received and did an incredible job with some difficult stuff.
And from what I've heard in terms of what this incarnation of Supergirl is supposed to be, more alien in nature, more Kryptonian in nature, more brash, more edgy, more, I don't know if weird is the right word, but that's sort of the Kara we're supposed to be getting. And for I think the two actresses that were in the final running for it, if nothing else, she more appropriately probably looks that character. I know
Hmm.
that you can however much that matters, but she probably more looks the part. So we'll see. Supergirl World of Tomorrow is the comic that this is all based on. So we'll see.
Super excited. She definitely embodies, like in a good way, kind of that alien imagery and movement. And I don't mean like alien, like little green man or whatever. I just mean there's something about her that feels kind of ethereal and otherworldly, very similar to like Anya Taylor-Joy, for example, or Halle Bailey. Both of those are really good examples of actresses that just seem like they can play characters like Anya Taylor-Joy has played, all kinds of things. Halle Bailey was our beautiful mermaid, where there's just something about it where it's like, I do believe you could be like a goddess or a superhero. Or, there's something about them that feels like more than just human. So it will be great. I'm excited. You know what else is great? You know what else is great, guys? It's Grammy season. Now, do I just care about this because Taylor Swift was nominated for 6 Grammys? Yes. But I thought I would just throw in a fun little question here before we dive into our Miss Scarlet and the Duke questions. If you were put on the spot, which I'm doing right now, and you had to pick a artist of the year or album of the year, you can do either one. For you this year, who would you pick as your artist of the year or album of the year? And I will also say it does not need to be an artist or an album from this year per se, just like what were you listening to? What was topping your charts?
Oh, I'm wholly the wrong person to answer this question. I'll let Kate go ahead.
Um, there's the first one that comes to mind is Light, Dark, Light Again, I think is what it's called by Angie McMahon.
Hmm.
That's definitely the album I listened to the most and really liked. Uh, and then I'll diverge a little bit because there's the breakout artist of the year and say Fizz, who is
Mm,
like it's a super group of all these other artists that I really, really love. But their first album came out as a group this year.
nice. Good picks. I'll toss a bone to Metric. Uh, and specifically, I'll mention their song, which I'm not even sure came out in the last year. It came out in the last couple of years called Who Would You Be for Me? That was like an earworm song for me in 2023. And the rest of their stuff is pretty varied and great too. Obviously, Taylor Swift, but other than that.
Mm.
Harry, are we granting you a pass or do you have an artist or album you want to
Yeah,
toss
yeah,
out?
you're gonna have to give me a pass. I could tell you who I would think would be like artist of the year in 1992, but that's
Love
not the
that.
question that you asked. That's
You
not
know
the
what?
question that you
If
asked.
that's what you're listening to this year, then that counts.
It would be just pick like any sort of golden age. Well, I would even say like late 1990s. Like pick any sort of like that time platinum era hip hop group, and that's who my artist of the year would be. I'm thinking
Okay.
like Jay-Z or Notorious B.I.G. or Tupac. That's
Hmm.
probably the last group of albums or music that I listened to and actively engaged in buying. So yes, Grandpa over here is not the person you're looking for Artist of the Year in 2024.
Okay, the kids are into Tupac. Like, into Gen Z is into Tupac. That is not a grandpa choice. I mean, it can be if you want it to
What
be, but that's
what was
not a
the
grandpa choice.
grandpa choice that I was singing along with at Dragon Con that really got like made you lose your mind?
What was
I
it?
can't remember
I
what the
don't even
song.
know, Kate. It was like whatever it was like something that would have been like before probably even like what my parents would know. I was like, how does she know this? I don't know what it is. I actually just read, since we're about to talk about TV, this is kind of relevant. I actually just read that like Gen Z is subverting the TV system or whatever by like not watching current shows. You know how like where if you watch live television at all, which I am doing right now because I'm like in my NFL era, right? They are always advertising like, oh, there's this new show starting on CBS called Tracker, and it's like, what? 2.5 people are watching that, whatever. Gen Z is not watching shows airing live. They're going back and you saw like Suits just like topping the charts on Netflix. They're going back. They're watching The Office. They're going back and they're rediscovering West Wing. All of that. So I think the same is kind of applying to music. Although Gen Z is up to date, like current music as well. They're kind of like digging up old favorites, I guess. Which is like once I say it out loud, I'm like, that's literally not new. Every generation does that. Y'all aren't special. Miss Scarlet and the Duke. I'll kick us off with a nice, easy softball question here. So, did I pay attention to the plot slightly? Miss Scarlet's boss re-enters the picture this week, sets Miss Eliza up for a period of self-doubt. There's kind of increased work focus for her. We already know prior to this, William's work and her work are both kind of falling apart around the same time, and we see both kind of come to a head here. What do you think of this focus on castles crumbling, especially as it pertains to Miss Scarlet in this episode? What's working for you?
Um, for me, it's interesting. I had actually noticed, I mean, there's not a lot of example episodes to actually really truly pull from examples for season four, but season four so far had felt like their weakest on the week to week mystery and drama. And
Hmm.
I've been vocal about my lack of interest in the week to week mystery.
Hmm.
Um, but this one especially has had a weak focus on it and has far more leaned on they've continued to bring up that they can't get any work for Eliza, and the opposite being true for William.
Hmm.
I will say I did think that episode 4 did kind of switch that up and really did a good job with the main case of the day. But I think continuously throughout the past seasons and this season as well, they are far more focused with like really telling you, hey, this is what they're going through at this moment in their lives. And the mysteries sometimes reflect that. Sometimes it's just a mystery of the week. And they're not the greatest writing. Um, but I think with them trying to actively do the self doubt thing, they are kind of happening to just make it work, whether that was their intention or not, of castles crumbling, and so does the mystery aspect of the show in a lot of ways. Um, and it is clear that they are kind of hinting at, well, if their careers change or don't work out, or they have to reevaluate what they want to be doing and where and how they want to be doing it, it's also a great time for them to reevaluate what they want their own personal lives to look like.
Hmm.
Um,
Like essentially,
which
whether it's their careers that's keeping them together
Yes, well, that as
or
well as are
art.
they, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, will they let that career dictate whether they can be together personally or not? Um, it's maybe not a choice I enjoy as a viewer, but I can definitely see why they're doing that.
Hmm. Harry, what do you think?
See, I probably my thought is this, right? Just thinking about like Eliza and like her professional situation, I kind of like this new dynamic that she's going to apparently have with Nash, right? Um, and so it feels like there is a path forward for her in terms of how this business could sustain itself and what role she'll ultimately play in it, and obviously how she sort of bounces off Nash. I really thought it was really sort of interesting how often and quickly they began agreeing with each other. And my thought was, this feels kind of right, like professionally, and am I getting like, is this starting to feel right, like personally? Because it just sort of felt really comfortable for
Hmm.
them. And I guess the ultimate question is she going to is she going to get the situation or the feeling like, if this can be comfortable with Nash, then quite possibly it could be comfortable with William as well, and maybe that's sort of what she may take from this. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic works and where it goes.
Like a tryout of them having a private
Yeah,
detective agency, but without it being them.
yeah,
Yeah.
or does it become more, right? And
Mm.
so I don't know.
Yeah, I I'll say this. I actually had the thought both for both of these episodes where I've never thought this before about William, about what if William decided he no longer wanted to be in the police force but still wanted to help investigate and took a partnership role with Eliza, and that's how they were able to kind of have the best of both worlds. And it had never like really, I think I might have thought, oh, but that would be an answer, but never thought they were going to explore it. But the fact that they really explored her father's history with being in the police force and then choosing private investigator, and then him mentioning that, and the scene where he's in her office as she's already walked away was actually this moment in my head that was like, well, it would be great because then you would be partners in both aspects of your life. This would be a great time. And then, of course, he has the flashbacks, and I knew, oh, that's not where they're going with this. Great.
It's set up for a season that would be very like His Girl Friday, like the workplace marrieds who still kind of bicker, but are desperately in
Mhm.
love. I think that would be
So
super, super cute,
I
especially
did
considering
have a
how much he
question.
admired her father in the flashback. Sorry, Carrie, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. It was related to the flashbacks, right? So obviously you guys have more history with the show in terms of the first seasons and that sort of thing. So when I see a flashback, you sort of start thinking about, well, okay, well, what is the purpose? What's revealed through the flashback, and whose eyes are you seeing it through? All those things. So when you get to the point of the end of that flashback, when basically we get to, hey, I what Eliza wanted from her dad was his support and that sort of thing, but he gave it to William, right? And so that's sort of a rift for them. So has that always been the understanding that maybe that's something to do with their rift a little bit, or was that a revelation?
That was a revelation. That is not anything that we knew before, and flashback
Mhm.
episodes like what we saw are not common. So everything we
Yeah.
learned in the past was somewhat new. I mean, I guess there were some things they talked about in the past that she had hinted at in conversations with Ivy, or we kind of knew that, her dad wanted this, or this is how she knew that one lady, and her, son, which we had seen in a previous season. But that
Mhm.
reveal that she had directly wanted what William got, and it wasn't even that William wanted it that much, it just fell in his lap, that was new and seems specifically timed.
Right. Because
Yeah,
I
like
just, yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, it's been previously mentioned that her father had some influence on him, but not to the extent that we saw, and
Hmm.
definitely not the timing and the alignment of how that would have affected her emotionally.
Hmm.
Yeah, because it sort of feels like it would be something incredibly difficult for her to get past emotionally. Like,
Hmm.
and maybe she has, I don't know, because like I said, I don't know the history, but it just feels like that's that's a kind of a big deal, a big impediment to how she should ultimately feel about this dude, right?
Hmm.
So I that was particularly interesting, that moment of the flashback.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they resolve that without taking the air out of the fact that at that time that was a restriction she would have had. At that time, she as a woman was not going to be she would not be a part of the police force. She was she was not going to be allowed, and like they can't they can't retroactively I mean, I guess they could change history however they wanted to, but if they want to kind of keep this thing they've built of here's this time period and here's what she could and could not do and here's how she was able to operate within and outside of that space, they have to sit with the fact that she will forever have some resentment for him, and that can't historically go away. That's very interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I also resent William, but I'll save that for my last question. I will touch on the plot very briefly because literally, who cares about plot? Within it, our favorite theme, what we've been kind of talking about this season, reemerges class conflict. It's one I think the show handles well, relatively. Did the story of the week intrigue you at all? Did it set the scene? Did that set the scene for our ending? Did we all ignore it entirely? Where are we at with
I'll go first.
Um, yeah, you go first.
It the case of the week did not intrigue me a whole lot until it got to the revelation of the why, right? Um, the why the feather thing was stolen, and I only watched it once, and I don't know if this was sort of resolved in the wrap up in terms of. I thought it was really sort of clever in terms of obviously basically blackmailing that Carter guy. But the thing that I wasn't clear on, and I don't know that they did, and I feel like it was something that they missed, was they did not use any of that leverage, in my opinion, or at least unless I missed it, to address the problem. Was it Lady Fallon, the one that was getting beat by her husband?
Mhm.
Was it her?
that?
And so, as best I can tell, that problem still remains. It's not like Eliza tried to blackmail Carter to then get him to blackmail the Mr. the Lord Fallon guy to stop beating his wife, and so it was. if you're going to bring that up, and I know you can't, we should not expect that like a show is going to solve domestic violence because in one episode, because that would be unrealistic. I just do feel like if you're going to bring that up, if there is some sort of clever resolution that they came up with, that they did not try to figure out a way to include that in terms of the wrap up somehow, some way, some follow up or something. So I feel like they dropped the ball in that respect. So I say all that to say that the case of the week didn't necessarily draw me in, but the people in it did. Um,
I wonder if the
if that
lack of
makes any sense.
resolution was intentional to give us this feeling of everything's unresolved and falling apart at the end.
Uh, That was kind of my impression. That so I've been pretty honest that I don't think that the case of the weeks have always been really well written. I think this one actually was. It's one of the rare ones I thought was really, really well done. Uh, no matter how much I saw where it was going, who stole it, from the moment we met the character and they made a point of saying that she made a big fuss about the thing getting stolen. I was like, okay, that was a cover, great. Um, to me, I think also having to do with I read and watch so much of this type of time period and this type of content. It's very common for this kind of problem to be seen and it not be immediately resolved. And kind of how they ended up having to leave it off was um, that Lady Fallon didn't want her husband to be killed. She couldn't take that kind of on her conscience. And so, as much as both of them would have wanted to run away, uh, they needed some amount of monetary help to do that. And so it's going to have to be put on pause. And the understanding is that, of course, Eliza didn't rat them out and let Lord Fallon know that this was their plan. So she still has time to get her money in order, her resources in order to do this again. Uh, but there's nothing really Eliza has to that could be able to do except maybe turn Fallon into the police, but then she's opened a massive can of worms with Carter that she couldn't resolve. So her best bet was to use blackmail against Carter, and that allowed Mrs. Carter kind of her secret, and it allows Lady Fallon enough time to try again.
I like that.
It was interesting, I guess, the plot was well chosen for the week because we needed to see Eliza and her boss both work on it, and therefore you needed to have men and women involved in the story so we can see how her boss is trying to interact with men, especially men of particular social status, and how and when that does and does not work. As opposed to what he's missing when interacting with women. Likewise, Eliza comes in, pretty much the men are ignoring her entirely. She's primarily a liaison for the women. She also interacts with men, and we're seeing that kind of gender dynamic play out through this plot. But let's ignore plot, guys. Literally, who cares about that? William certainly makes a choice at the end. He's making choices throughout this episode, but he certainly makes a choice at the end to tell her he loves her and run away to New York. Maybe that's a uncharitable characterization of his sequence of actions. So I will toss it to you guys. What did you think of this choice? Did he do the right thing? And let's fight about it.
Carrie, go first.
There are two thoughts that I have about it, right? And so, and I'm not saying that it was done well, but sort of narratively, right? Like from the writer's perspective, it's like, okay, we're at this situation, and so what are the options? He professes his love and he stays, and then it's like roll credits because it's like that's the show, right? So you have that aspect of it, and and so then of course it's like, well, we can't do that yet. We've got some episodes left, so let's throw a hurdle in there. Let's throw an obstacle in there, and let this obstacle be, oh, I love you, but I have to go. And like the only way that that makes sense in universe in terms of the characters would be when he remembered what lady was it Arabella said to
Hmm.
him, and so his thought might be, well, if I give her space, then she would have to make some sort of grand gesture that helps me understand that she cares for me just as much as I care for her. And okay, sure, um, but telling someone that in real life, telling someone that you love them and then hitting the bricks, that's kind of immature. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for the character, but it does at least serve the story in terms of, okay, here's something else that they have to deal with. It was not a great decision, but it also feels like, well, what other choice could they make at this point in the show that's going to be interesting, that just doesn't have him saying what he needs to say and do and be there for. Here's your hand
Answer to
raised.
that as to what other choice they can make. However, I'm going to let Kate go first.
I, I think we might have similar answers. It's not, so him admitting his love
Hmm.
and then choosing to leave is a trope we've seen dozens of times, and it makes me
Hmm.
feel the same way every time. I tend to find that William, of the two of them, is the more emotionally mature and logical. He gets a little hot-headed at times, he gets a little loud, a little brash, and he does start occasionally show some of his biases of the time. But for the most part, he is the more cool-headed of the two of them.
Hmm.
But this was a sign of emotional immaturity and laziness if it were considered in a character consideration. Like if we were taking out the writing perspective, we were only talking about characters. It's
Hmm.
immature and it's cowardly to go, "Hey, I love you. Bye. I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to tell you I love you. I'm not going to stick around for the potentially heartbreaking or embarrassing consequences of me telling you that. I'm going to leave you with that for you to have to process and deal with and emotionally go through. And but when I get back, you're going to miss me so much that you'll just forgive me." That might not be fully what his thought process was, but that is the end result aspect of how that turns out a lot of the time in storytelling. If you're going to look at how the on a writing perspective, though, I just think it's lazy. I think it's done all the time, and I think it's a very lazy choice to have this and then go, but if we let them get together, they'll have the moonlighting curse, and we can't do that because there is options. They could have had him stay. They could have had her get angry with him for like holding this information for years, and her kind of going, "What do you mean you're in love with me?" and doing that whole bit. And then by episode 6, her fully coming to terms with her own feelings, and then season 5 would be kind of the let's dip our toes into he's actually a private investigator with her. Instead, we're doing this kind of forlorn. She wants to be mad at it because that's how it's going to play out in the next episode. Is she's going to be mad at him for saying this and then leaving, but then she's going to be upset with herself because she's mad at him because he's not there, and so she misses him, and then she's going to forgive him for doing something so emotionally manipulative as doing this. And I
Here's the
think that's
thing.
a
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Emotionally manipulative, immature, petty, all of that.
mm,
I love it. I'll eat that for dinner. That's great. I love an emotionally immature toxic storyline, and I would be so, so fine with it. The problem is that for me, the problem is
mm,
not that this was an emotionally immature storyline. My problem is this was an emotionally immature plot point. Because if you wanted this storyline, which I'm not even going to fight about that, like if he needs to like fuck off to New York for whatever reason, go buck wild, I guess, like for the sake of the story. I kind of get the sense that the next episode is also a flash forward. So if they need to do this to eat up time and like move their characters forward in time for some reason, also fine. Here's what needed to happen first for him to do that. He needed to be rejected by her. What they were not willing to do was have her reject him because the behavior that he showed at the end of the episode was the behavior of a guy who's been rejected. It's if he, oh, we should date, we should do that, whatever you want to call it. We should court, we should, and she's like, oh, not yet. I'm not sure, like, blah, 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 dragged her feet, whatever. And then he keeps, circling the parking lot and keep trying to, he keeps trying to figure out like, oh, can we this? Can we that? I have feelings for you. I love you. Do you love me? Like that kind of thing. Like the PETA from the Hunger Games kind of energy. Katniss, do you love me? Katniss, do you love me? Like if he had in some way pursued her, like made it clear, like he loves her or has feelings for her or wants them to be more than friends and had made that clear and had pursued it once or even twice and she had rejected him, then the behavior of a guy who's been rejected, which is, okay, well, you rejected me when you thought I just had a crush, but actually I was in love with you. And because I'm so desperately in love with you, I'm going to run off to New York. I would love that because that would have actually been really, really angsty of like, you thought I had these little feelings, but actually I have these big feelings and you, whatever. He didn't actually pursue her. All we see is like sometimes she was late to dinner with a friend. Late to dinner with a friend is not the same thing as him telling her his feelings in some way, even if he was downplaying them and having her reject them. And that's what needed to happen for this storyline to make sense. Without it, he's acting rejected without having been rejected, which makes him hurtful without justification. So we don't get that same level of angst. There still is some angst because they're very, very cute and they kiss and we want them to get blah, blah, blah. Some, but I could have had a double helping of angst, but they weren't willing to have her actually reject him because it probably would have made her like unlikable or whatever. But it is what it is.
That's
If you wanted him to leave, that's what needed to happen.
that's what I was going to ask you because obviously the choice was made here to make him look bad and not her, right? And so
Mhm.
obviously that's either a writer decision or director's decision. But the question is why, right? Is it because they think the audience doesn't want to be disappointed or upset with the decision that she made, or was this just like they had a dartboard up and they were just throwing things and said, "Here's what's going to happen." I would be really interested to know why they went this route, and I'd be interested to know what your thoughts about why they went this route. Because it feels like there was like maybe an entire scene or two that could have been missing to your point. Like, hey, let's do this, and then it didn't happen. So I'm just wondering how they just chose how they landed here is the question I have.
I mean, what we gain is we gain insight into the depth of his feelings. Now we kind of, if we can kind of like read his behavior as part of this, we know the depth of his feelings, but what we're gaining is the knowledge of like he is deeply and irrevocably in love with her and does not want to be just friends. Great. Like we knew that, but love to have it on paper. 10 out of 10. I guess the decision to not have her do anything that justifies him leaving, is it for the drama? Is it to keep her sympathetic? Is it to keep us in the dark, air quotes, in the dark as to what her feelings are because she didn't get to respond. So we don't know if she's in semi rejection territory or fully acceptance territory. I guess now I say that, maybe it is to keep her a bit of a mystery. Kate, what do you think?
I, I don't know. And I think that was why I was so frustrated with the choice is because when I was saying like it's an emotionally manipulative choice, like you were saying, if it was for a reason, if she had rejected him or if they had had some confrontation and he had to go off and pout about it or had some rationale, I kind of would have been down for it because it would have been that really angsty, heartbreaking thing. But it it's strange that he didn't really give her an opportunity to express her opinion, express her feelings, and that's really
Yeah.
what strikes me is he said this and then basically said, "But don't say anything. I'm gonna leave." And that's what that scene boils down to.
Maybe
And
he's just
I
scared of her
almost
answer.
wonder I wonder if it's they're trying to play into like he's scared of her answer because there is some level of yeah, he's the guy in charge, whatever, but she's really the one that wears the pants in their dynamic. I don't know if it's that. I don't know if it has something to do with they want to keep her likable, but they've never made a concerted effort to make her likable. That's kind of the joy of her character is that she is this like you can empathize with her and like root for her, but she's not a likable person.
Hmm.
Um, and in fact, they made an effort of really pointing that out this episode. So I don't think it's that necessarily. Um, I I almost wonder if they thought this would be a great way to really once again force her to come to terms with all the different elements of why she keeps her feelings to herself about him. Because we've had the little jealousy moment with Arabella, and we've had the hurt comfort moment recently. But I wonder if like the I want to hate him but I can't because I love him part is really where they're trying to go with this. Like they're setting up this example of she could be so mad at him because of this thing that he did, this decision that he made that is technically a decision for his career, quote unquote, is how he's framing it. But in reality, he made a decision that would affect both of them because he didn't want to have to contend with both of their emotions. And
Hmm.
it's almost as if on a writing perspective, it's because they wanted to give us time to get to explore what her emotions would be and
Hmm.
her finally facing that after the I hate him so much, but I love him type arc
Hmm.
because
Well,
of this.
let me throw this out here unless Cammie was about to say something.
No, go ahead.
So let's look at it like this, right? Because so many folks who watch this show are obviously assuming that they are in game for each other, right?
Hmm.
But what if they're not, right? So what if he? I mean, obviously we're sort of, and but my point is this, right? If they're not in game for each other and he feels the way that he does, he knows he loves the heck out of her, but he has this sinking suspicion that either she won't feel the same way about him or she can't feel the same way about him, then I'm
And
not advocating
he
telling
is
I'm not advocating telling
obligated to
someone
find out first. He is,
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but he
but
is
but here
obligated to find out first.
but let me say this then. So he's obligated to find this out, right? So but what about their relationship to this point has given him reason to believe that that's the case, that she loves him and that's where this wants to go. Maybe there's been some things,
He woke up from a coma with her holding his hand, with her being like daily visiting, claiming to be his wife in order to get
right,
in there.
right.
Everybody with eyes thinks that they like each other. He is choosing to let fear keep him from at least giving her a chance to respond.
Right. But up
Well,
until this point, they are not together, and there's got to be a reason that they're not, and it's not just him, right? But my baseline point is this, right? So he's come to this realization, I love her. Perhaps she can't love me, and I can't be here for that. So I need to go and move on. And so I'm it's a terrible, horrible decision and it's immature and I've been that dude before and I can understand it because he needs her to admit to herself and to him that he is worth this. So she has to come to him. It's a terrible thing. It's an immature thing. I'm not saying it's not, but I understand.
He doesn't want to give her a chance to say no. He also doesn't
well,
want to give her a chance to say yes. He is wanting to live in a limbo where he has come to acknowledge his feelings, but does not have to confront her feelings. And whether it's
mhm.
he's scared she'll say yes and it's going to dramatically change their lives, or he's scared she'll say no and he'll never emotionally recover from this, it doesn't matter because he's still, if he's going to behave like somebody who's rejected, he needs to present her with this information and allow her to have at least the dignity of responding. And again, everything she's done up to this point has been nothing other than very much seeming like a loving partner. Like aside from like the personality quirks of being like generally abrasive and annoying, which we love, she's basically acts like his wife. So why he is obligated? It is I drafted a sequence of questions about this, and the sequence is, what do you think of his choice? Did you do the right choice? What is the right thing? And then I wrote an off script question just for Carey and Kate. I was like, essentially, this is falling under the philosophical idea of like, what does love require of us? And in my opinion, love requires of William that if he's going to tell her his feelings, he needs to let her answer back, not just presume an answer and behave as if he's melodramatically rejected.
Yeah. Well, and I'll add to that. If you kind of take a step back, we've previously, long time ago, talked about this before the Arabella thing, about how we were kind of like, we had opinions where they were both at this position where they both had equal reason and kind of, all right, somebody
Hmm.
has to say something. I don't care
Right,
who, but somebody has to do it. And their actions after the Arabella arc are now different and cannot be interpreted the same, because him going out with the Arabella
hmm,
communicated to Eliza that he did not have any interest in her, the girl standing right next to him. So she has like kind of buckled down any of the emotion that she knew she had for him and said, well, he went out with Arabella and I was standing right here, so there's no way he likes me like that. So
right,
she has taken that option off the chopping block. That's no
right.
longer an option for her in her mind. So she's already gone through the rejection. She has already
Hmm.
gone through it, gotten over it. That was her jealousy arc. He has, instead of allowing himself to have that rejection moment, to step up and go, "Hey, you haven't even looked at a guy this entire time.
Hmm.
Is it me?" Instead of him asking that, instead of him taking that risk, he says, I have these feelings, but I'm terrified to know what you feel, because if they're good, then we'll have to pursue that, and that could be horrible for like where we're at right now. And if they're bad, then I don't have the emotional strength to deal with that. So I'm
Hmm.
going to tell how I feel, and then you just have to sit there and deal with it, and I'll be gone. And
And let's not forget, she
that's
was like, so you're saying this is my fault? And he's like, yes.
yes.
First of
Yes.
all, rude on top of rude. Carrie, go ahead. Sorry.
See, I'm coming from it from the perspective that he already feels like she does not love him, right? And I'm not saying that she does or she doesn't, but I feel like that's where he is coming from. Don't defend it. I'm just saying that is the impression that I got. Now, in terms of going back to the whole situation with Arabella, that is the history that you guys have that I don't. And that absolutely makes a whole lot of sense when it's like, oh, you are interested in women. You picked this woman. You didn't pick me.
Hmm.
So obviously that means the door is closed. But I can't imagine two people who are investigators and detectives who spend as much time with each other as they do don't freaking see what's before their eyes in terms of how they feel about each other. And the fact of the matter is that that hasn't been acted on has to mean that okay, well, obviously she does not want me or she doesn't want to be with me, so I need to move on. Not
She
defending it.
claimed it. That's
That's
the
just
thing. I think she has acted on it. She hasn't tried to kiss him. She hasn't tried to move into his house and cook food for it or whatever. But in every possible way that she can express, she called him family. She took care of him when he was ill. And he does the same for her. Like, credit where credit's due. They're both taking care of each other and treating each other like family. I just think at his big age, and that's also kind of part of it, it's like he's too old to be acting 17. If this had happened in the flashbacks, I would have let it slide. And another thing is, I love mutual pining. Mutual pining, mutual, like the mutual unrequited love, whatever the tag is on that kind of thing. Love it. Eat that up for breakfast and twice on Sunday. But you have to set up mutual pining. What he's doing is he's pining and it's acting as if she has rejected him, or in some way he has some reason to believe that she cannot or will not pursue him. But they haven't given us that reason. They need to give us that reason. We need something to give that pining some like meat and chew to it.
The only reason they've given is his flashback thought to what Arabella said. And
Right.
there
Now he
is some
listens to women
credence.
suddenly.
Now he listens to
You
women.
know,
So, and it's not necessarily that Arabella's accusation that she's going to be dedicated to her job is baseless. We have seen Eliza prioritize her job, but you got to ask. You can't just assume you know everything. And you can't assume that the woman who had her heart broken was right in the situation, even if we kind of liked Arabella.
Right.
you know what was more damning to William's character, in my opinion, I'm surprised hasn't been brought up yet, or at least how I took it, right? Because in his flashback of Arabella, she was like, you know, and basically is I think what she said or what he recalled her saying was that Eliza's priority will always be like her job and that sort of thing. And it was like, um and I know in a relationship you should probably put your partner first, right? But why couldn't that be enough for him, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not like she's putting her job or her career like first, and then William is like 10th down there, like way down low in the basement. It's like, hey, we've got one A and one B, and can you can you deal with that, right? And if they were
Good point.
working together, which is obviously the solution we all see, then yeah, that should work, right? And so it felt like it was a ding on his character to be like, well, if she can't put me first, then I got to get out of here. And I thought that was probably more damning than anything else.
Well, I think we beat William like a dead horse, but I would continue to do so and will continue to do so. I could talk about this for hours. However, I do see we're already 4 minutes over. Um, I really appreciate that we all kind of came at this from different perspectives, even though Kate and I were a little bit hive-mindy. Carey, thank you for digging in your heels and presenting another perspective, one which I do believe the writers would strongly agree with. Let's do a 30-second rundown of what else we watched this week, and then we'll do our 30-second rundown of our Woman of the Week, just so I don't steal too much more of your time. I'll be quick about what else I watched this week. Irrational's back, Scorched Earth. You're seeing it on the thumbnail now, and in it, I think they dabble with having Alec be a god-esque character. So that's an interesting turn. He is playing God a bit in a couple different ways. Also, Bachelor's back, but we'll talk more about that in a second. Harry, you want to do your 30 seconds?
All right. I just finished watching the first four episodes of season one of Orphan Black. I'm like, just a decade behind everybody else. Um, I jumping into it flat-footed without knowing anything. I feel sort of just as discombobulated as the lead character, which is probably how we're supposed to feel. So I'm enjoying this ride so far. It feels like an adrenaline rush mixed with some heroin and some acid. So it's fun.
Watching a gold star old show is very Gen Z of you. Hey, go ahead.
I finished up the Percy Jackson season one. My kind of general take on it is I think I really just missed the train for reading the books. I actually read the books, a couple of them when I was younger. Didn't really get into them, didn't finish the book series. Reread the first one recently, kind of felt the same, honestly. The show is a faithful ish adaptation, as good as they're going to get. I think they've changed a couple of things and they've really allowed Percy the God complex of just like figuring out stuff without really having to try, which is kind of weird. But overall, I think the faithful adaptation. I just kind of find the series at large like it's I. I don't mind it. It's fine. It's just I don't think I'm the target audience, and I don't think I've ever been the target audience, and that's just kind of what I have to deal with.
It is what it is. Not everything's for everybody. I have not watched Percy Jackson, but I've heard pretty good things on social media. Woman of the Week for me is Daisy from The Bachelorette. She is one of the many lovely women vying for Joey's heart. She lost her hearing when she was between the ages of 11 and 17, and then she got a cochlear implant, which is now working for her. And despite the show putting her in very obvious, loud situations, obviously intentionally, like a helicopter ride and these kind of crazy group situations. She has handled it all with like grace, and she hasn't really gone like too far into the sob story route. Like she's kind of like kept, good humor and her wits about her, and she's the definite woman of the week. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next real quick.
Um, Thank you.
Or Carey can go next.
I've got two women of the week. One
Go
of them is a
ahead.
cop out. One of them is a cop out, and one of them is one I've already said, and that was and I forget her first name, but her last name is Yushek, the woman who made those incredible like jersey jackets. Because of her exposure to Taylor Swift, who is my other woman of the week, she has got a licensing deal with the NFL, which is freaking fantastic. So those are my two women of the week, particularly Miss Yushek for getting that licensing agreement, and Taylor Swift for being a freaking economic engine unto herself. And that's saying something when you talk about how you can impact the NFL, a freaking multi-billion-dollar a year industry. So
Pulled
kudos to
over
those two women.
$300 million into NFL and KC economy. Crazy.
Wow. Mine was initially going to be the wives, so the Lady Fallon and Mrs. Carter. But I remembered that we can do like real people. So I'm going to do Amelia Earhart because we may have found the remains.
What? This is the first time hearing
Yeah,
about this. That's wild.
I have been seeing article after article, and it's not a lot of information. I keep seeing like, we may have found the remains. Like, great, more information. None. So this could all be hubbub and false, and people just saying they found it and they found like a piece of sheet metal in the ocean. But that's what I've like article after article I've seen all week. I don't know if it's just because the STEM stuff that I read or what.
That's so cool.
That's quite literally some of the biggest news, and we save it for last. Above the
That
fold, above the fold, above the fold. Next
Yeah.
time.
was quite a mic drop. But feel free to bump that up to the news section next time. I do want regular Amelia Earhart updates for sure. Speaking of next time, it will be delayed till after Valentine's Day because our next one would fall on Valentine's Day, and instead, go fall in love. Bye! Also, go fight with us in the comments if you disagree with our opinions. That will be very easy to do because we had different and conflicting opinions. Okay, bye!